Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, I titled this message, When the Selfish Use Children. When the Selfish Use Children. For those of you all who have listened to past audio dealing with selfish people, conceited, prideful, even people who like to use anything and everything to get what they want, then you are already familiar with where I'm going with this message, because we're going to be set free. We're not going to go through the trials, the tribulations, and so forth. We're going to look at things from a spiritual perspective, and we're not going to allow the enemy to use children to get next to us. Some of you all, you have already went through something like this. You went through it when you divorced, when you ended up getting custody of children, and for others, you went through it when you didn't get custody of children. And for some people, they started going through it most recently when they married into a family of children or a child. And the enemy will take situations like this and then use them in such a way to ultimately kill, steal, or destroy someone spiritually, physically, or mentally. When you look at a child, you don't see a child as being nothing more than a child, right? You don't see any evil going on. You don't see too much of anything until you start to get to know that child. Then you find that there are some devious things that are connected to the child because, well, the child is vulnerable. Satan knows how to use children because children are not always on point when it comes to spirituality. You know this when it comes to adults. So sometimes we need to be reminded that children can be used like ticking time bombs. They can be used like grenades. They can be used to abuse. They can be carriers of information. They can be demonic. They can come across as very sweet and nice, only to have a grand master plan to tear up your household. Some of you all, you've already experienced this sort of thing, and that's why you're packing up. That's why you are making every effort to get away. Others, you are pushing children away because, well, you don't have a handle on your children or someone else's children. Some others are putting children up to saying things and doing some things to hurt a parent or some other person in the family because, well, you don't know, I went through a lot with that individual, and the only way that I'm going to be able to make that person suffer is I'm going to use their children or even use my own. I'm telling you, we got some devious people. And if you are blind and you don't sit back and think a while, you're going to get caught up in some mess. But God's people aren't going to get caught up in a mess because they're going to lean not on their own understanding, but they're going to lean on the one true God who's showing them some things. How do I safeguard myself from a child? Come on. How do I keep myself from falling apart as a result of information given to me from a child? What can I do to be able to ride above a situation concerning a child? I'll tell you first and foremost is that if you're not a prayer warrior, you need to start praying, because some things are simply out of your hands. Some things, the government, law enforcement, attorneys, social workers, you name it, got children protected in such a way that if you complain or if you do something that's crazy, if you end up disciplining a child, now suddenly your freedom is at risk. So some of you all know this sort of thing, and this is why some of these children get away with what they get away with. Now, some children are innocent, believe it or not. They are innocent in the mess of things. There are some grandparents who put some seeds in some children's heads concerning their parents and others. There are those relatives who don't like that sister, that brother, that niece, that nephew, or cousins. And so we're just going to tell these children some things about their no good, whatever, whoever. We got some folks who don't mind putting children up to selling drugs, to prostituting themselves, to stealing, to killing, to beating up other children. And God, when he sees this sort of thing, some folks got to pay the price. Sooner or later, there's going to be some consequences for putting an innocent child up to doing some devilish work. Some folks don't wonder why suddenly they get sick. They just think it's because of this, that, and the other. They come up with some excuses, but they don't connect the dots to the fact that they were messing around, putting children up to doing some dirty. They don't want to admit to the fact that they were talking ugly, being nasty, and doing any number of things to hurt someone else using a child. So they don't see that butt whipping coming from the one true God. Because you see, when people think that folks aren't watching, they're watching. When they think that certain people are a part of the program, they end up finding out that some folks are nothing more than Christians in stealth mode, people of faith that are operating as children of light. Even though they thought, oh, I thought you were like me. Maybe I once was like you, but not any longer. I've come up out of that type of mentality. I'm not about to use children to get anything for me. I'm not about to use children to get any selfish needs met. All I want is to have some peace. Some people, they will divorce. They will separate. They will put all sorts of information out there to let some people know that an adult is up to no good. You might want to check into this parent. You might want to check into this adult who is a part of this clique, who's involving children. Everything that you see isn't necessarily what it is. Everything isn't so innocent like you think. Now, some of you all, you're raising some children, whether they're your children or not. The point is that you're around them and you're finding out some disturbing information. The kind of information that makes you want to make some phone calls, okay? Makes you want to get in a car and drive over somebody's house. The kind of information that makes you want to just do the types of things that God would say, stand down. Just stand down, okay? You've got to take that moment to sit back and think about not just the present, but the future. What is going to take place if you do A, B, and C, okay? You're going to have to also look at all the evidence that proves that somebody is indeed telling the truth and all the evidence that proves that somebody is indeed telling a lie. You're going to have to be more observant. You're going to have to at times record things. Sometimes you might even have to sit back a little bit and orchestrate the kind of plan where you're going to do some pop-up visits. I want to know. I want to see. I want to find out, is this child really telling me the truth about this person and that one? Okay. Some small children can't articulate in such a way where we can get down to the nitty gritty in terms of what they're telling us. So we've got to do some investigation. We've got to sit back and meet with other folks before we go and launch an all-out attack on someone or some group. Okay. Some of you all, you are in these relationships and your relationships are slowly but surely being challenged in ways that they have never been challenged before as a result of a child showing up. You see, sometimes selfish individuals who put children up to doing all sorts of things end up also causing problems for other people around that child. And so there's some people that second guessing whether or not they should be raising a child, teaching a child, parenting a child, or doing anything for a child because of the parents or guardian that is connected to that child. I personally feel like if you are going to connect yourself with any child, whether that child is yours or not, you are going to have to be mindful of that child's feelings. Okay. You're going to have to take the time out to sit down and really talk with the child to find out what is really going on with them, especially if they're exhibiting signs of suicide, depression. They tend to be a bit irritable. Some children have undiagnosed mental illness, and some parents don't want to face that reality. I remember sitting down and talking with someone years ago, and they were telling me about their child and didn't want to face the fact that the child was exhibiting all sorts of signs of mental illness. Okay, so if someone is in denial, you can't do but so much with a person like that. I mean, you can give them all the proof. You can argue with them. You can even bring professionals into the situation. And still, as long as they're in denial, they're going to be a problem for not just the child, but for you and anyone else who brings them the truth. That's when you've got to safeguard yourself. That's when you've got to really make a decision whether or not you want to be in a relationship with someone who refuses to see the truth concerning their child. Okay? Because sometimes it's that one child that causes problems for the whole family. And then you've got to look at, well, why would a child be acting in such a way where they are just doing things that you can't even speak about to others because they're so embarrassing? What is taking place? Children don't suddenly become evil. Children don't suddenly start going off the deep end. Children don't suddenly start going around being disrespectful. They had to have been taught something. They had to have been exposed to someone. There could have been some conversations taking place behind closed doors with that child about maybe a common foe. And so the child doesn't know what to do with this anger that they feel on the inside. So they just go off on everybody in the household. My daddy don't like you. My grandmama don't like you. All these other people don't like you. So therefore I don't like you either. You see, and I don't have to listen to you, and I don't have to do what you tell me to do. You don't know the history. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've seen. You don't know what I heard my mother or my grandmother or whoever else say or do. You see? And so you, being that innocent one in the game, coming in thinking that you're going to change and rearrange some things, you end up packing up and leaving, right? Or you end up getting into a whole lot of arguments with that parent or that guardian over that child. And is it worth it? At some point, you got to say to yourself, is it worth me going through all this aggravation? You see, sometimes the problems don't show up when the children are busy. Right? When they're involved with all sorts of extracurricular activities and so forth, they got a lot of stuff going on with them. But when there isn't too much going on, that's when you start seeing more issues. That's when you start seeing more problems. That's when they got more time to think about some things. That's when they start coming up with some strategic plans to pay some people back too. Because if you were that adult that was saying a lot of negative things about the other parent or about relatives or about anybody who that child cares about, oh, you're going to reap that sooner or later. I know that is a hard pill for some people to swallow, but you will reap it sooner or later. Sometimes it takes a child to become an adult son or daughter to realize, I see what was going on all them years. So-and-so was jealous, or so-and-so had beef with this relative or that one, or this one was setting up all this strategy to keep the other parent from being a part of my life, and blah, 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 blah. They start piecing it all together, okay? Then when they start piecing it together, they realize that years have been robbed. So when they realize all of this, that's when they start not wanting to have too much to do with that parent who is now a senior, who now wants some compassion, some understanding, who now wants some attention and all that. You know, that's why we don't pity everybody who's in a nursing home. Okay. Some folks is in a nursing home and they're not receiving any visits because of all of the dirt that they did in their younger years. The Lord showed me this. He said, wait a minute, before you start with your sentimental stuff, before you start pitying, before you start blaming those terrible sons and daughters that don't want to have nothing to do with their parents, understand what these parents did years ago. Sometimes you got to go through your own share of stuff, right, to realize some things. And that's what happened with me. I said, oh, now I get it. Oh, now I see why people do what they do. You see? And sometimes it takes the death of someone for people to realize, uh-oh, that one was being selfish all along. That one had selfish interests, selfish gain, selfish whatever, and was putting those kids up to doing all that dirt. My. You see? But if I'm too busy doing whatever I'm doing, I'm not seeing how all of this is playing out in the family household. I'm not seeing how somebody is acting up and withdrawing or doing some things that causes the family embarrassment. Maybe a child has already passed and nobody bothered to sit down and think, well, why did that child take his or her life or take someone else's life? Okay. What was really going on? Not our assumptions. What were the facts? that led up to why the child did what he or she did. And sometimes we find out through other relatives, through the child's siblings who committed the acts. We find out that there was some abuse going on in that household. We find out that there were some parents that were hiding some things. We find out that there were some guardians that were doing some things to children that were despicable. And this is why some children are driven mad. This is why some children go off and start messing around with alcohol and drugs. This is why some children will become very sexually promiscuous early on. Okay. This is why some children will end up going off with the same sex even. They may not know why they do what they do, but as they get older, they realize, well, it was a little bit more than just I was born this way type of stuff. There were some other things that took place as to why I did what I did. You see, I mean, there is a lot that goes on. And when I am a selfish individual and I don't care too much about anyone but getting my selfish needs met, then I'm not going to think too deeply. This is why you get maybe one parent who's going all the way to get that child some help, while the other parent is just sitting back looking at everything that's taking place. Because there's one parent that has a generous spirit about his or herself, and there's another parent that's selfish. Or sometimes both parents are selfish and could care less. Right? Because, well, you're not doing for me, and all I want is for you to get up out my house. All I want is for you to move away. Or you got some who the children are bending over backwards for the parents, doing everything from the time they was little and still doing some things, and got their wives or husbands involved in the mess. And nobody is looking at the fact that it's a selfish individual that is causing a lot of the drama. Go on over there and tell your mother to buy such and such. And if she don't buy it, I ain't getting you nothing either. Ooh. Go over there and tell your dad that I need him to come over here. And if he don't come over here, I tell you what, I'm going to forget about your birthday. What? You got some of them sit back and tell these kids, okay, now listen, I know that you love so-and-so, and I know that that's the person that is your favorite and whatever else. But, and then they come up with all of these things that they want that child to do. Okay. And if the child does not do what they're told, then there's consequences. And then that child won't say too much of anything because they don't want the adults falling out with each other. But if a child suddenly changes his or her ways and they become quite evil and mean-spirited and they've got a dark side or whatever else, you got to put two and two together. Somebody's been talking to that child. Somebody's putting some pressure on that child. Somebody is putting some stress on that child. Why does that child behave like that when all before they was cool? They was okay. Why is it that now that school is out, for instance, the child is starting to do things that we've never seen before? They're becoming a problem. Right? We've got to go deep with these things. Selfish people, once again, they are not going to question what is going on. All they're going to say is, all I need is for this child to come over here and fix this thing. All I need is for them to help me out with the chores. All I need is for this child to come over here and help me with the family business. All I want is this child to come over here and do A, B, and C for me. That's it. Or they are taking up some time with some other folks and they're using the child as a conversation piece. Okay. Or something to show off. Oh, this is my daughter. She is just so smart. She's so this, she's so that. Okay. And then you find out that that child has their share of issues, lots of them, if you spend enough time. Some people aren't spending enough time with children, so they don't know what they're dealing with. So that carrier of information that goes off and tells the rest of the family what is going on in that household. Okay. Well, they get to carry that information because nobody's spending time with that child. So, hey, I'm bored. I ain't got nothing better to do. And besides, that adult said they were going to buy this and do this for me. So, yeah, I'm going to carry some information. I'm going to say whatever is on my heart. Okay. Sometimes there are children that are divided. They feel like they got to pledge their allegiance to mama and they got to pledge their allegiance to daddy. So they're kind of playing both sides of the fence. I'm going to be buddy with this parent, but I'm also going to be buddy with this parent. And then I don't want this parent to be mad at me and I don't want this parent to be mad at me. But then the problem with this is that both parents are selfish. And if I'm not mature enough, right? I'm not wise enough. I'm just a child. I don't know what's going on. All I'm thinking is that I'm just doing the right thing. I'm appeasing everybody. How can I speak like this? Because years ago, as a child, I did some things. I did some things to appease adults because I didn't want to deal with being told that I was selfish, even though that's what I was told as a kid. You see, and so the selfish is talking about the child. And so the child grows up and wants to appease everyone, right? People pleaser. You guys check that audio out, right? I told you some of this stuff I can't speak on. Because why? Well, I can't speak on it because I didn't experience. But the stuff that I can speak on, I can definitely relate because I did experience, right? So these topics that you hear, I've witnessed and I've dealt with some things and all of that. So here I am, a child, and I'm talking to these different adults, and I don't want this adult upset with me, and I don't want this adult upset with me. So I got to learn how to play all games with all adults. And so what happens is that if you mess up, right, if you don't stay on point, if you are not appeasing them when they want you to appease them, then that's when they start wanting to tell your business. And I had one particular adult who, whenever I acted like I didn't want to do something, she would go and tell my business. Even though she would say, oh, I'll keep this between you and me. No, I made her angry one day, or I didn't do what she wanted me to do. So now she's going to tell my business. Okay. So you see, selfishness once again shows up in the most unlikeliest places with some people. And then when you do what they want you to do, like deliver some information to them or what have you, now you're in their good graces. Now, maybe I can buy this for you. Maybe I can do this, that, and the other for you. Okay. Sometimes it's not even about material. It's just they want you to be a companion. Okay. So as a kid, I was told that I was to be company for this particular adult. And I was like, okay. I mean, how does a child be company for somebody who's 20, 30, 40 plus years older than you? I don't have much in common with the elderly. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting up there as a child, and I'm trying to figure out, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? And a controlling individual, well, they'll pretty much tell you what you're supposed to say and what you're supposed to do. Okay. And once again, if you do not follow suit, that selfish individual is going to have the bad report. They're going to go back and tell, she didn't do this, or she didn't do that, or he was this and he was that. I don't know if some of you all realize this, but some of you parents, you're putting your children in some situations that God does not want children in. You are pairing them up with people that even God does not favor. You know that some of the things that these children are learning from some of these people are just disturbing. You know that you don't like what's coming out of their mouths, but yet you continue to put them around these people who you grew up with. Okay, people who you got problems with, people who you go low contact and no contact with, right? So it would make sense not to continue to have children around folks who you know are selfish, right? It's all about self. It's about getting my needs met. It's about making sure that folks will dance by the beat of my drum. Controlling behavior is with the selfish. Demonic entities are with the selfish. Unfortunately, the selfish is very stingy at times, cheap. Don't want to give up too much of anything, especially when it comes to money. They're not going to get quality items unless it's for themselves. They're not going to give the best meals to children. They will make sure that the good piece of steak is for daddy or for mama, and then that cheap piece of meat is for the kids. They're going to make sure that the children are available whenever they want them to be available. And then if they don't have any time or can't get nothing from them, then you just go play, or you go out, or you move away, or you just stay out of my way. Okay. The evidence is there when you're dealing with selfish individuals. They don't have time to talk to children. It's just pretty much, hello, how are you doing? How was your day? And they move on, and they're doing what they want to do. They are not taking children to places for the most part, okay, because, well, you're just going to stay here and you're going to watch soap operas or game shows or whatever else with the adult, and that's it. And when I want to take you somewhere, it might be whenever, okay. So the children just kind of grow into this atmosphere where if I don't want to get in trouble, I just better go along with this adult person's lifestyle. Okay. If they don't want to talk to me, then I'm just not going to be saying too much because I don't want to upset that adult. Okay. To be in an atmosphere like this for days, for weeks, for months even, will wreak havoc on the child over time, because the child will start to feel like they are not good enough. Their self-esteem will start to diminish a bit, because 9 times out of 10, if the child is not doing what the selfish person wants, the selfish person is going to berate them. They're going to be verbally, possibly physically assaulted because you're just not doing what I asked you to do, and I don't appreciate this, and so now all of this negative stuff shows up. When we get to a place as parents where we realize that somebody or some group around our children is up to no good, causing all sorts of conflict, is very pessimistic, looking at the glass half empty kind of person, we've got to safeguard our children, and we've got to make them aware of what we see, and tell them that we are not going to support this person or that one on the negativity, that we're not going to aid in helping toxic folks get their agendas met. And how you do that, of course, you wouldn't say it in the way that I'm saying it, but how you go about doing this sort of thing is that you don't show that you support toxic stuff. And part of that is not having a child go around people who are very selfish, very arrogant, very prideful, conceited, people who they only have time for you when they feel like having time for you, but yet you might have a need, a pressing need, but nope, it doesn't fit in my scheme of things. It doesn't make me feel good. It's an inconvenience. I don't see what the benefit is to me to allow your children around me. I mean, if all this is evident, then why do you continue to put children around people like this? Because they will eventually show that they too are picking up on the selfish behaviors of whoever is around them. Okay. And some of the selfishness shows up even when you don't want it to show up. Okay. You may have nipped it in the bud, so you thought, with a child, and then they decide to show off in front of some of these adults. And now you're looking at your husband or your wife or whoever like, I'm about to knock this child's head off. I can't believe that they're doing this. Okay. Once again, consider who you're putting that child around. Okay. So these are the things that, once again, we got to think about, right? When we are parents, when we are guardians, when we are responsible for children, we don't celebrate some of these entertainers out here, some of these people who are part of all sorts of movies and all sorts of television shows that promote selfishness, promote greed, promote disrespect, promote pride and I'm better than you. Because if a child watches enough of that programming, they are going to pick up on that sort of thing. Some of these children have now grown up to be adults, okay, who once went through this type of upbringing, okay. Some of you all, when you listen to it, you say to yourself, yes, I remember going through stuff like this. I remember the media I was watching, the types of people I was around. I remember how parents were behaving or grandparents or whatever, and it was a lot of negative stuff. And God was with you even during those times. I know sometimes it didn't look like it, but God was with you and he brought you up out of that. And so the last thing he wants is for you to put children back in settings that are familiar to you, that you had to fight your way out of. Okay. That is not what God has ordained. He does not want us to do that sort of thing. Okay. So selfish people will put children up to doing all sorts of devious sorts of things. Be watchful of the lies that come out of these children's mouths. And when they say that adults told them to say this or say that, it's time to start putting a check on some things. When you notice that the child is picking up on all sorts of devious behavior from media and elsewhere, you're going to have to cut some things off and cut some things out, okay? Replace all the negativity with positivity. Check out the local programs that's out there. Check out the different activities that they could be a part of. Buy some things that are going to help them emotionally, physically, spiritually. Don't be the parent that's all about, well, I want to spend this money on this thing and it's what I always wanted. But meanwhile, your child has an immediate need, because then you are showing that you are selfish. Okay. There are children that are in dire need of a whole lot of support. Okay. And if we don't give it to them, then it isn't any wonder that later on children turn. So that is it. Blessings to you. Please do check the description box for anything that is of interest. Also, you've been listening to YouTube NM Enterprise 7, and we do welcome donations. Thanks again for listening.